Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week, our guest is viral star and passionate defender of the Democratic Party's values, Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow. Remember, we love taking your questions, so write into politicswarroom@gmail.com or send a tweet to @Politicon for next week's show. We'll get to as many as we can, and don't forget to tell us where you're from. Please check out the links to this week's sponsors, Smith AI, Trade, Coffee, and the Jordan Harbinger Show in the show notes. We thank you for supporting our sponsors. It really helps make this podcast happen. Please tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast. James, you know, Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow 10 days ago was known mainly to her suburban Detroit, Oakland County State Senate constituents. She's become now a national figure. Some would even say an icon, standing up to a right-wing smear that falsely charged that she was a sexual groomer. Senator, we are so pleased to have you on this podcast. Thank you for joining us. Let me start by saying...
Thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
It was a remarkable speech, a remarkable response, and there has been a remarkable reaction. What enduring impact do you envision or hope this might achieve?
So I've been walking around my district. I've been at a few events since giving the speech, and I have heard from a lot of moms, people who look like me, right, who have said, I've been so tired after the past 2 years. I'm exhausted, but this felt like the kick that we have to keep fighting. We have to keep going. And if that's what we can do is get a lot of suburban moms, pile in the minivan, bring some snacks, let's go save democracy. That's what I'm hoping we can do.
Right, maybe some backpacks in the back. President Biden called you. Has there been any follow-up? Are you going to appear with him, or has the staff talked to you since then?
Oh, yeah, it was amazing. I actually missed his first phone call because I was reading my daughter a bedtime story. So I'm always going to tell her that no, remember, you were more important than the president. But I've talked to Jamie Harrison since then. I've been talking to a lot of people. So I am just ready to jump in on the team however I can be useful to get Democrats fired up for this midterm cycle. I'm all in.
Well, if Joe Biden doesn't take my advice, but if he goes to the Wolverine State and doesn't campaign with you, that's going to be a big mistake. I suspect he will. He will campaign with you. The state senator who put out that false, sleazy charge, is it Lena Theis? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Lana Theis.
Lana Theis. She took that cheap shot, and then she said afterwards, well, the language was awkward, but she basically doubled down. Is she getting any heat?
I mean, I'm sure she is, but it is just shocking to me. I mean, you see my speech happen. She has sent out multiple fundraising emails. Another Republican running against Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin sent out a bait text that said, your child has had their gender reassignment surgery scheduled. Click here. And it was a click to his donation page. And then we saw the Michigan GOP nominate two Trump-backed conspiracy theorists to AG and Secretary of State. So I'm sure that there's blowback, but also this is the playbook, and hate is still winning. It didn't end with one speech.
Yeah, she is in many ways the core. You spoke in that speech on the floor. You spoke of your faith. You grew up a Catholic. You went to Notre Dame. You idolized Father Ted Hesburgh. You may have fallen out some with your church, but you are still a very avowed Christian. But let me ask you this. The faith community used to play a major role in the drive for civil rights and equality in America. And it appears, at least, that they have been eclipsed by the right-wing evangelical churches, often on the other side. Do you agree? And if so, why?
Well, that's part of the reason that I wanted to kind of take back my own identity, because you see Christianity being weaponized to hurt people, to hurt kids, to hurt marginalized community members. And I know that's not where most people of faith are. My husband is Jewish, and I was at a rally recently at a synagogue, so I know that it's there. And I know that there are people of all faiths who still fundamentally believe in fighting for each other and community, and that is something we have to lean into as Democrats.
James.
Oh, well, Senator, of course, I just have this massive political crush on you. And
He said
we
political.
talked on the phone earlier, but what I'm interested in is your take. So, as you relate to me, correct me if I'm wrong, the senator who called you a groomer, or whatever it sounded it was actually kind of started out as someone you had like a friendship with, or more than an acquaintance. I mean, you weren't like political; you were on a different side of the divide, but. It didn't start that. I'm just curious. What do you think drives these people to this kind of behavior?
Yeah, and
They're
that's
not born that way. They
no.
didn't start out in life that way. What drives a human being to look at somebody like you? Maybe they disagree with you on, union organizing or the minimum wage. Maybe they agree with you, disagree with choice. To say that you're a criminal, because that's what a groomer is. What do you think drives them to that?
And that's part of what was so shocking is, we didn't have a bad relationship prior to the fundraising email going out. I wouldn't say that we were best friends, but we had gotten coffee together. We had talked about our husbands and families. I mean, we had a fine relationship. And I know that she's in a primary. She's got a primary race from the right. And I see this willingness to kind of almost disassociate. There's your family life and your personal life, and then there's politics as if it's a game, and there's no consequences. And that's not how this works. Politics is life. These are decisions that we are making about people's lives, and the willingness to try to disconnect those two things is really shocking to me.
So you want to talk about Michigan a little bit, because we'll certainly want to get into 2022 in Michigan, but it strikes me from a distance that first, I never thought of, George Romney, people like that. I mean, there's a kind of moderate tradition of Michigan Republicanism. And it seems to me now that they are particularly crazy. I mean, kidnapping the governor, I mean, calling you a groomer. I mean, they have just left. Most of them, not all, I'm sure that there are plenty sensible Republicans, and you could point them out too, is that got that dairy farmer for the Upper Peninsula that said, look, there just wasn't any fraud in the election. I'm sorry. Okay, maybe he's not somebody I'd vote with, but he seems to have some honesty. They have particularly crazy Republicans, and I think Michigan has some really effective and tough women Democrats, and I certainly put you at the top of that, but my dear friend Governor Granholm, Governor Whitmer, our Secretary of State. Do you agree with my observation that there's unusually nutty Republicans, and women Democrats have played an outside role in modern Michigan politics?
Yeah, I would agree. And so I represent Mitt Romney's hometown. My district was a Republican district that I flipped in 2018, and there was a reason I was very clear in the speech not to target Republicans, because I think when my constituents hear me say things like that, they think I'm talking about them. I'm not talking about my constituents. There's a difference between this current Republican Party, which is so disconnected from the Romneys, from people like Bill Milliken, who was a governor here in Michigan, who, was a huge conservationist, who loved the Great Lakes, who was in the tradition of moderate Republicans out of Michigan. I represent a lot of people who are still that type of Republican and who feel so lost right now because they don't see themselves in Mike Shirkey, who the day that the FBI announced the plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer, he walked out of the Senate chambers and went to a rally with the same extremist, Boogaloo Boys and militia groups that were rallying on the Capitol steps that day and told them to keep going. There's such a disconnect from the kind of history, the proud history of bipartisanship and moderation in Michigan. So that's really a lot of my message to voters is, I'm not talking about you. This current Republican Party is not the Republican Party that you grew up with, and you've got a choice this year. It is vote for people who want the government to work, or vote for conspiracy theory, anti-government extremists. That's the choice this year.
So I'm going to turn back to Al, but I think in your district, I gave a speech, I think the largest Jewish Reform temple in the country is in your district. Am I right?
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Okay. I'm checking my memory, because when you get my age, you forget a lot. But I think in the 90s, I gave a speech there. And the rabbi and people, took me around and showed me the whole thing. And I just distinctly remember, if I'd have thought where the largest Jewish Reform temple in the world, I wouldn't have picked suburban Detroit, but it
Right?
was.
Yeah.
I guess you get a lot of votes there. Albert, go ahead.
James, when you were giving that speech, the senator was in elementary school. I just would.
I know this. I was on the Beamer.
That's a high honor.
I was supposed to be, not actually driving Ford, but anyway.
Senator McMorrow, let me just take you back quickly to what the particulars were, what the charges she made and you answered. One dealt really, didn't it, with LGBTQ people?
Yeah, so the charge, and again, this was in a fundraising email that she sent out for herself. We are not even in the same district. She named me by name and accused me of grooming, which the definition of grooming is befriending a child for the purpose of sexually molesting them, supporting pedophilia, and wanting 8-year-olds to believe that they were responsible for slavery. I mean, I'm a mom of a 1-year-old. That is a horrific accusation to level against somebody that you work with. It's madness.
Yeah, it really is. And they of course bring up race and is the critical race theory, to your knowledge, taught anywhere in the Michigan public schools?
No.
So it's just an absolute canard. I mean, it's just, they make it up. And do you know anybody in your party who says that basically their kids ought to feel guilty about slavery?
No, and there is a huge difference between understanding accurate history. When I grew up, I didn't grow up in a particularly diverse area, but we learned about slavery, and you feel horrible knowing that humans owned other humans, but that doesn't mean that it was my fault. That means that we now have a responsibility to learn from that so that we don't repeat history. So we actually had Christopher Rufo was invited to testify in the Michigan Education Committee in the Senate 6 months ago. This is the guy who was profiled in the New York Times this past weekend as the architect of creating the fear around critical race theory and now pivoting to LGBTQ issues because he feels like that is so much more powerful. It's made up. It is manufactured outrage that is creating issues where there aren't issues. And it's deflecting. It's scapegoating. And this is frankly what's so upsetting is they're lying to their own supporters because let's say we pass legislation and next week a 5th grader who's trans can no longer play soccer. That's not going to bring your healthcare costs down, but that's what they want you to believe. And it's lying to everybody. It's hurting a marginalized community, but it's also just scapegoating because there are no policy plans.
Yeah, this is going to play out not just in your state of Michigan, but all over the country. What advice do you offer to those, mainly Democrats, who are going to be under similar attacks?
I think we can't lose if we stand in our morals. We love our families. We love our communities. We love our schools. We want teachers and parents to be able to talk to each other because it takes a village to raise a child. And this is just outright hate. It's hate and it's lies. And I think we can get aggressive, call it what it is, blunt it, and point out that it's a scapegoating tactic because then they don't have a platform. There's nothing to stand on. And if we can make that case really strongly and frankly show our communities, especially those who are being targeted by these attacks, that we stand with you and we're fighting for you and we're fighting for everybody else because there aren't any policy solutions behind these really hollow attacks.
Senator, I'm going to turn it back to James, but I think you have a primary too. How's it looking right now?
We feel good about it. I'm excited. I represent the suburbs right now. With redistricting, the Michigan Senate has the opportunity to flip to Democratic control for the first time since 1984, which, believe it or not, is before I was alive. So it's longer than my lifetime.
James was still giving speeches back then, but go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm excited. So my new district brings together the suburbs and the city of Detroit, which is so exciting for me to be able to hopefully represent a Metro Detroit diverse district. So we feel good about it. We're going to work super, super hard, get out on doors, talk to everybody like we did the first time around and ask for their trust. I fight like hell. Hopefully this week showed that. And I'm really excited to go into this next cycle.
James.
So, Senator, before we leave, we're going to get into the most important topic of this conversation more than anything else is we have critical races coming up in Michigan. I know the people that listen to us want to know about it. I know they're interested. They want to write checks. We have a Secretary of State race. We have a state Senate race. We have a governor's race. And we don't want to leave without talking about that because winning elections and acquiring power is the single most important thing in the world. But I'm going to, before we get with our grand finale on the most important topic here, I'm going to be embarrassingly complimentary of you. I taught communications for a long time at the college level, and one of the things that I would always point out, and I'm not saying equating what Lou Gehrig went through or what you did through. I'm not doing that, but that was one of the great speeches of all time. Now, if you actually listen to the words of the speech, it was fine, but the circumstances elevated it to one of the most legendary moments, not just in American sports, but just communications and emotion. And I think what you did, I want to be clear, you did not have ALS, but there was a lot of people in the country that said, God damn, I wish I could just say it. I mean, yeah, I'm white, I'm straight, I'm married, I have kids, but that's not what defines me. I'm a human being, right? And no one could say it, and you had this golden moment that you just seized and owned it. And you were speaking, you weren't so much speaking to this cravingly ambitious person, you were speaking to every person that values their humanity above their sexual orientation, their gender, their race, their ethnic background, anything like that. And I think for that elevates you to the very highest level of communicators. And I mean this seriously. I mean it very, very seriously. I'm not teaching anymore. I'm a little too old. But Al showed that speech to his class at Penn, and they just loved it because you spoke for so many people. And you just had this moment, and you should always treasure what you did. And it was, by the way, it was a great speech. And so I just want to tell you how much inspiration, and I hope people take inspiration for this and take inspiration for this moment where you had this opportunity and you stepped in and you said what we all felt.
Thank you.
So I know it's too long and too groveling, but I just mean every word about it. And I thought about it, and I thought about it. Of course, when Greg Sargent, said, asked me to comment, and I'd already seen it, and he said, I'm going to send you to have to look. I said, Greg, I don't have to look at the goddamn thing. I saw it 10 times last night because I was jealous. Jeez, I wish I could have been there and done that. But you did it. And I just love you to death, woman. I just got to tell you that right now.
Well, I hope it helps a lot of people feel a kick in the ass to get moving. That's what I hope comes out.
Let's talk about what's coming up in Michigan: governor's races, state legislative races, Secretary of State race, right?
Yeah. So Michigan. I mean, Michigan is the epicenter. This is the front line. This is what's going to determine where the rest of the country goes. We are a state that elected Gretchen Whitmer, Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, 3 powerful women in our executive office. But we have more homegrown militia activity than any other state in the country. So it is not an over-exaggeration to say democracy is on the line. And Michigan is going to determine, if we have free and fair elections after this election. So it is so important. We have to reelect Governor Gretchen Whitmer. We have to reelect Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who just received the Profile and Courage Award for her defending elections against all of these allegations of election fraud here in Michigan from the 2020 election, and Attorney General Dana Nessel fighting the good fight. When Roe falls, again, Michigan is on the front lines of women's rights, family rights, all of that is happening in Michigan. So I know a lot of times Secretary of State races and AG races get missed, and I have to make a huge pitch to our state legislature because this is where if we hadn't had the oversight committee that did reveal that no, there was no fraud in the 2020 election, despite what Rudy Giuliani said in a hearing that ended up on Saturday Night Live for Michigan. This is on the line. So Michigan, we have a real chance to flip the state Senate. Like I said, for the first time since
let me jump in. I'm going to turn it over to Al real quick. What is the one place, if you're listening, where should someone send a check? It would be the party? Is there a coordinated campaign? Is there some place?
Michigan Democratic Party. Lavora Barnes, our chair, she's wonderful. She will make sure that we are putting that where it needs to go to get everything we need to do done.
So listen up, folks. You just heard from the senator that the Michigan Democratic Party, and I like that when I'm confident that a party is well-run and competent, I always recommend that. Send your goddamn checks, not to Marjorie Taylor Greene's opponent. Send it to the Michigan Democratic Party and send a lot. Albert?
James mentioned, Senator, that I teach a class at the University of Pennsylvania, and I did last week show the clip of you speaking, the whole clip of you speaking on the Senate floor. And I had a whole number of students who that night emailed me that they sent it to their parents, which really, I thought, I mean, when a college kid sends something to their parents, that means it really had an impact on them.
Yeah. Oh, that means a lot. And we've gotten, James, I will send you some of these letters we've gotten. We've gotten them from all over the country, people writing by hand these incredible stories about their lives, their parents' lives, what service means, and it's been so moving and wonderful.
Well, Senator Mallory McMorrow, you are an icon, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate you being on this program, and we hope you'll come back.
Al, thank you. James, thank you.
All right, and tell your friend, the chairman of the party, that I'm going to carry my bony ass up to Michigan sometimes, and I'll do a fundraiser for you, anything that you need.
You are welcome anytime. Just don't wear a U of M shirt in Lansing.
You can go visit that reform synagogue again, James.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Give your kids a hug for us. Okay, thank you.
And James, now more than ever, businesses are spread thin, but clients demand an instant response. So if you're losing leads from missed calls or web visitors that could grow your business, you need to delegate those frontline conversations to the best virtual receptionist service, Smith AI. It's not your average receptionist service. Smith AI provides businesses with award-winning virtual receptionists who handle your calls, chats, and texts to unlock new business at a fraction of the cost of hiring in-house staff. And since 2015, they've combined the best receptionists across North America with AI technology for superior business, communications, and customer engagement. Their friendly and professional agents screen leads using your custom criteria, schedule appointments on your calendar, and call back leads who complete your form. They do it all by phone, 7 days a week, and on your website through their 24/7 live chat service. They even answer text and Facebook messages. How much time would that save you, James Carville?
Well, not only would it save, it's not just a time saver, it's a money maker. And the fact that you can do this at a fraction of the cost of, having someone that you pay that's there, that does stuff for you and everything, it's just enormous. And I know people use cell phones, have other things today, but boy, there's nothing better than having a potential customer or client call and having the request being dispatched with professionalism, incompetence. This means a lot to the bottom line, but just a ton of small business people, and particularly small business people that provide goods or services.
Yeah. Smith AI integrates with your preferred software, Salesforce, HubSpot, Calendly, Zapier, and thousands more, keeping you off calls, but always in the loop. Plus, they have English and Spanish-speaking receptionists and will block spam for free. So no more annoying sales calls. Smith AI handles all calls, after-hour calls, or just your overflow, helping thousands of small businesses across a wide range of industries, including law firms, home service professionals, marketing agencies, and other service-based businesses. They're ready to help your business too. So imagine work uninterrupted, running from your business with less stress and getting more leads from your marketing efforts. Smith AI pays for itself and then some. With all the new clients, their receptionists help you win. You'll never miss another lead. So you'll boost revenue, increase your focus at work, and keep your staffing costs down. It's as simple as forwarding your calls to Smith AI. Plans start at just $240 a month. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why business owners like Justy Nicole say Smith AI receptionists are her secret to business growth and client happiness. And our listeners will save $100 when you sign up using our promo code WARROOM at smith.ai. Visit smith.ai to read 5-star reviews and be sure to use our code WARROOM, WARROOM, to save $100 at sign up. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI or look for the link in our show notes. James, a lot to talk about this week, but some of it, we probably want to skip. Like, I don't know enough about Twitter to comment on the implications of that. But one thing I think that you've talked about, and there's been several stories, the Democratic energy, and I'm not just talking about the rank and file, but I'm talking about the groups, the organizations. It's not what it should be.
No, and it's been written about in New York Magazine, which, as you know, I'm kind of a big fan of. I think it's the most provocative of these kind of left of center publications, and it had a piece that something I've been on for a long time. What good are these Democratic interest groups? And I'll just be specific here: women's health groups, environmental groups, you name them. And they seem to just absorb a lot of money and not do very much. And of course, after this piece was written, and I hate it that I can't remember the writer's name, but he's a kind of old lefty. He comes from a pedigree, and he understands that. And actually, Michelle Goldberg wrote about it again in the New York Times. And there's just going to have to be a serious reevaluation of how these left of center interest groups and national groups work. Because I have to tell you, the pro-choice people have been a disaster. The pro-life people have beat them like a drum. And they're getting ready to lose in the Supreme Court. They're losing in every state legislature they can. And people that care about this, that are passionate about this, that think this is an important issue, you got to change game plans here. This is not working. It's not working at all. Climate is receding to the back. The climate movement has not energized people, has not invigorated people. I think it's been flat. It refuses to use emotion as part of its message. It's convoluted, and it's going to face major, major, major defeat. This is not a good time for this entire thing. We're receding, and we're going to recede more. And by the way, Roe is a 72% issue, and we're going to lose this totally. Most people want to be activated by climate. We're losing this by the minute. They're just not any good. They won't change. They raise money from the same donors. They get the same grants. They all hire each other, and they all do the same thing, and none of it works, and they'll never be challenged.
Well, I'll tell you what I think the core of the problem is. If you look at the right-wing groups, the Republican groups, Club for Growth, some of the evangelical Christian groups, the pro-life groups, many of them, most of them, tie what they're doing to politics. They're involved in campaigns, and that's central to everything they do. And correct. I think if you look at the other side, they are less linked to politics. Some are, but a lot aren't. They do their own thing. They go and they they make all kinds of pronouncements, and they put out ads, and they talk about how important the cause is, but they don't tie it to electoral politics as much as the right does. And it goes back to a study that we both admired a great deal about 7 or 8 months ago from a Harvard political scientist. And what they did, several of them, they went and they looked at North Carolina and Georgia and the William Barber Justice campaign in North Carolina and Stacey Abrams' campaign in Georgia. What Stacey Abrams did, she tied it to getting people to vote, to explaining them the consequences. And it made a difference. It probably is the reason, in part at least, why Biden carried that state, why they elected 2 senators. By contrast, William Barber in North Carolina, with all the good intentions, had all kinds of demonstrations. They went to the Capitol, they marched, they had all kinds of events, but they didn't tie it to electoral politics. And I think that's a problem with the pro-choice people, with the climate people, and with a number of the others in the Democratic side of politics today.
It's like they don't want to get their hands dirty. Right? And so as long as they're in Washington and they're hiring the same people who go to the same places, read the same things, listen to the same things, they're not going to be challenged. And the last thing that these people want to do is go out and organize in a state. What, you want me to go to Eastern North Carolina? I don't think so. I'm in Adams Morgan. I'm not going to do that. I have to. I brought my friends, and I got my wine and cheese parties, and I listen to NPR, and this is what I am. And that is the problem. They don't want to engage. They just want to talk to each other. They want to go out and literally have the same people, give them the same money, and live off of it. And they're losing. And they're bringing a lot of people down. Look at the amount of energy you had right in January of 2017. They had 1 million women on the mall. And it just dissipated. And I don't think that there is sufficient leadership. I don't think emotion is used. I don't know what they're doing. I think they're just all talking to each other. That's my own view.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of that, and they don't. And I must say, when I look at the right, as much as as bad as I think some of their causes are, they're shrewd. They really are shrewd. You look at the Club for Growth, which they're frauds. They said they're for limited government, small government,
Right.
lower taxes.
And the last thing their policies do is grow the economy. By the way,
but what they really do is they tie to campaigns. Anywhere you go, the Club for Growth is a major factor in a campaign, and I don't see that on the other side. But James, what else? What else is on your mind?
Well, I mean. So what I like is this psych ops war that's going on about Kevin McCarthy. Who's recording these? I mean, at first it was Liz Cheney. Then somebody came in and said, no, it was Elise Stefanik. And can you imagine if you're Kevin McCarthy or you Steve Scalise or you anybody, you're scared to talk to anyone because you don't know who's diming everybody here. But somebody is. And it reminds me of the Robert Livingston fall. So at the 2000, tell a story, because I think it's where they did 2000 convention. His wife, Bonnie, was at the Republican convention. Obviously, I was doing media stuff, and my wife was, obviously there. And the family, and she comes up to me and she says, you slimy piece of shit. You brought my family down. I hope you feel good about what you did. And I said, Ms. Livingston, I was just kind of mulling around. I didn't have anything to do, can't tell you I was disappointed to see this hypocrisy exposed, but I didn't know about it, and I wasn't the guy behind it. And then about 3 years later, I run into the former Congressman Livingston, and he said, man, I'm sorry that, we now know that Tom DeLay did the whole thing.
Yeah, James, back up. What the thing was when they dumped Newt Gingrich as Speaker,
right.
They were going to turn to Livingston, and within a day, or actually less than that, it came out that he apparently had some kind of an affair with someone, which in that environment immediately took him out of it. So that was the context
Thank
of
you.
what,
Yeah,
of what delay.
I was presuming too much knowledge. Yes, but
Most of our viewers aren't as old as we are, James.
I agree. I agree, and that was a good backup there to catch a ran down to first baseline because first baseman is the ball. But forget that for a moment. But I mean, the point is, when that happens and you don't know who did it, you don't know who to trust. And so the game is, let's come up with somebody else that might have done it, because obviously someone doesn't want McCarthy to be the presumptive speaker. And so it's more likely that it's Stefanik, because Liz Cheney is not going to be the presumptive speaker, for sure.
Well, don't rule out Jim Jordan.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, was it the butler in the library, or would he do it with the candlestick? I mean, there's all kind of stuff here. And this game should continue as to who did it. They could do a political clue game, Kevin McCarthy. And who are all the suspects? I mean, I would give anything to be like a 31-year-old reporter now and just write a piece. But
oh man, I'd give anything to be a 31-year-old reporter. Period. But
yeah, I'd be a 31-year-old bricklayer to tell you the truth. But
no, it's right. And of course, what they, one of the things is that among this entire group, that McCarthy is a bit like Trump. They know he wouldn't have any loyalty to them, so why the hell should they have loyalty to him? And
right.
He may get to be the next speaker, even. But he's going to be a wholly owned subsidiary, first of Donald Trump and who knows who else.
I just think this whole intrigue thing, I mean, it's psychological warfare that you can't believe, because you don't know who to trust. Mm-hmm. And you don't know it's I don't know how do I say it sounds? Is it Shakespearean? I don't know. It's
maybe Greek.
It's something like that. I mean, and you can imagine, of course, eventually we're going to find out who it was, and there's going to be a lot of books written about it. And it's also just the oldest story in the world. People see that, or think, and with good reason, that they're going to be in power. And everybody is lining up. This is really this is Hamlet on steroids, man. I got to tell you, I just love this story. I can't get enough of it.
Kevin McCarthy had the speakership within his grasp. He thought about 7 years ago, and then he made a dumb comment, even if it was a truthful comment, that the whole purpose of the Benghazi thing was to sleaze up Hillary Clinton, and he said it worked, and then they caught him in relationship apparently with somebody, and so he was bypassed. And Kevin hasn't learned his lessons, because what Kevin is he's a shrewd political tacticianer. But he's not a heavyweight, and he's obviously not disciplined. And I can tell you this, if he is speaker, James, I will make a fearless forecast. He will go down as a terrible speaker in the lines of several of his predecessors.
People have proved this again and again. If you have people, and I would certainly put President Clinton at the top of this. If you have people that feel a certain affection and loyalty to you, anybody isn't going to inevitably hit a rough patch. All right? Every ship gets into stormy weather. And the difference is that Kevin McCarthy, there's no one that feels intensely about him.
Right.
All right?
Right.
And so if it comes, okay, well, this is some heat, I'll just get the hell out of there. Where people that build up relationships and have people that care about them, when something happens, these people are going to be much more inclined to come to your defense.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it was true, as you said, of Clinton, certainly true of Obama. It was actually true of Reagan. And it's certainly true of Nancy Pelosi. But it ain't true of Donald Trump, and it ain't true of Kevin McCarthy.
Right.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, Reagan he has gotten a lot of trouble over anything, and justifiably, but he had people, that cared about him.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
I drink so goddamn much coffee, you wouldn't believe it. And I'm 77, I'll be 78 this year, and I can't tell you how many times I would read about a study about the health consequences of coffee. And I go, oh my God, because I've drank so much of it in my lifetime. There's not much I can do about it. I'm pretty much stuck with where I am. And it also seems to be that the benefits of coffee on health are now pretty well established. That wasn't the case the whole time. I never stopped drinking it, but I was kind of hoping the research get better. And I love good coffee. This is something just in James Carville's wheelhouse.
Hey, nothing is better for starting your day and powering through your projects than the perfect cup of coffee. That's why we love Trade Coffee. It's the best coffee you'll ever brew, thanks to their partnership with the best independent craft roasters from big cities and small towns across America. And by supporting their businesses, you'll get coffee that matches your taste, with over 450 kinds ready to ship and a human-powered algorithm that finds a flawless fit for you. Not only that, but their freshly roasted beans coffee come from farmers who get paid fair prices to sustainably source the greatest beans from around the world. Now, how great is that, James?
You can get any kind you want. You don't have to go to the supermarket and get it and say, oh my God, they don't have my favorite kind of coffee here. And of course, New Orleans, a friend of mine who's very successful in the restaurant business says there's two things you look for as to how good the food is in the city. One, how good is the bread, and two, how good is the coffee, or maybe it was the coffee and the bread. I forget which one. And we have excellent bread and excellent coffee, and I think that's true of a lot of things. But I think these guys are really onto something, and it's just become such a pain in the ass to go and have to sit there. You want a cup of Joe, and somebody in front of you getting a skim latte, raspberry infused, Moscato or something. Man, just get out the goddamn way and let me get my coffee, please.
Well, join James's wheelhouse because your taste is your own. And Trade Coffee is so confident they'll find your coffee soulmate on the first try. If they don't, they'll take your feedback, and an actual coffee expert who's personally tested every single roast will work with you to send a brand new bag for free. Just answer a couple questions and you'll get your own personalized variety of coffees delivered fresh to you as often as you'd like. Trade comes as whole beans or grounded to fit your brewing preference, and they'll guarantee you'll love your first order or they'll replace it for free. They've delivered over 5 million bags of fresh coffee with 750,000 positive reviews. 750,000 positive reviews. And we know you'll be next. Right now, Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/warroom. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Let me just say that again. Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/warroom. That's more than 40 cups of coffee for free. Get started by taking their quiz at drinktrade.com/warroom and let Trade find you coffee you'll love. That's drinktrade.com/warroom for $30 off, or look for the link in our show notes. All right, James, now we have these great questions that come in every week. Again, I want to tell you, if we don't get to it this week, please send it in next week because there's so many good ones here. I'm going to start off with Jake in Clinton, Washington. Never been to Clinton, Washington. I've been to Clinton, Iowa.
I hadn't either. I've been to Clinton, New Jersey.
Yeah,
Clinton, Louisiana.
Yeah, but
East
not
Parish City, East Feliciana Parish.
All right, Jake, we'll be out there watching, but that's a fabulous state. Jake says, doesn't matter what top-down policies or ad strategy our party has when they're winning the propaganda game from the bottom up. And he's talking about Republicans. When is our party going to realize that we are bringing an old TV ad to a modern viral fight? All my friends see comes from the right.
You know, first of all, stunning observation. Secondly, the party and the people, and when I say this, there's a lot of complexity that goes in. But when I'm talking about congressional staffers, people that work at interest groups, NGOs, foundations, newsrooms, they all come from a certain thought process. all right? And they most all are highly educated and coastal and have no desire to be anything else. And I just think that the Democratic Party, and I think Senator Tester would agree with me, that's what any number of people who text me from time to time or call me would, we have become a comfortable coastal party that is more interested in not the rank and file of people like you, but the people in Washington are more comfortable with being smug and being comfortable than they are going out and doing things. And if that's fine. You need people at the Pentagon, you need people at headquarters, but you need people on the front lines. And we just have, in my opinion, a lot of talented people who are sitting around Adams Morgan, going to wine and cheese parties. And I ain't getting off of this one.
Well, please don't, because it's important. Our next question comes from Lillian in Woodstock, Virginia. I know that.
I know Woodstock.
Yeah,
oh, God,
right.
That's my hometown almost.
Do you?
Shenandoah County.
She says, is there an opening for Democrats to recruit Disney and its money to dethrone DeSantis and, more generically, the Republicans, coming under the heading of my enemy's enemy is my friend? Look, first of all, you got to understand what DeSantis is doing is a fraud. I mean, it's against state law. It's not going to happen. This is solely a campaign issue for him. A political cheap shot. It's supposed to happen in 16 months, I think. And Disney says it's not going to give any money to Republicans. I hope they keep that up. But to be honest, it's not going to happen. It's not going to have much impact right now. But I think you have to keep at him. I want to get Senator McMorrow down in Florida. She could take on Ron DeSantis.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, because my fellow Shenandoah County has really hit on a response thing. The first thing is all of this, the transgender stuff, the critical race theory stuff, the Disney stuff, it's all stunts. Understand, these are college frat kids pulling stunts. That's all this is. It's nothing to do, and of course the courts are going to throw this out. Of course he's going to own the libs. Of course nothing is going to get advanced. It's talking about a problem that doesn't exist. I think Disney will go back to giving to Republicans because this is going to pass over. The courts are going to strike it down. If it doesn't, it's going to cause billions of dollars of tax increases in Florida. But understand this. The modern Republican Party is a party of stunts. That's all they do. It's one after another. And once you start down the path of stunts, you have to go one more. All right? You have to go one more. You have to keep stunting up. And you just watch. They're just going to keep doing more of this. But this is what this is. These are frat people pulling off stunts. So somebody says, well, look at this. Well, we can do that. And it's all manufactured by calling Senator McMorrow a groomer or sending people, emails telling them to get their child's number for sex change operation. It's all fucking stunts. And hopefully, and I would have said 5 years ago, stunts evaporate. They're all what they are. People don't confuse this with policy. I don't know. Maybe stunts, at least for now, seem to be working. And we got to get our asses off the coast and in the country and take these stunts on.
Agreed. Let's stick with Virginia for a minute. Sean in Reston says that the Democratic, good question, Jane. If the Democratic Party were a baseball club, how would you rate our farm system? Who are the blue chip prospects in the party, and how would you measure their readiness for AAA, AA, for the big leagues?
Thank you. And I would rate our 2018 incoming Democratic class, and not in the farm system, I would put them as the 27 Yankees. All right? I would put them as, one of the great teams ever. And unfortunately, we have to elevate these people. But if that 2018 incoming class was just I felt so good about the future of the party, and they've been stifled and sort of caught. But this is a great myth that the party doesn't have talent, doesn't have a bench. They have a bench. The problem is we got our bench, which should be playing in Major League Baseball. We got them stuck down there in the low minors. But I love your analogy. I love your question. And there's actually, and I think you would agree with me, the 2018 incoming Democratic House class, stunningly talented on many different levels.
Yeah, they sure are, and I just hope some of them are elevated to get more national attention. But James, I've got an addition to that. Actually, it was in the 2018 class where actually won an upset win in a state Senate race in Oakland County, Michigan. And boy, I'll tell you, this is someone who clearly is ready for AAA and will be ready for the big leagues very soon. And that's our guest today, Senator McMorrow.
Sure, of course.
She is big time.
And there are people like that everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
James, the next, I'm going to stick with old Ron DeSantis for a minute because Jeff in St. Pete, Florida says the right-wing media is moving away from Trump and toward DeSantis. He says DeSantis is 10,000 times meaner and smarter than Trump. He doesn't care if he's liked. What do we do to make sure he's not nominated? I'll tell you something. I disagree with you, Jeff. If Trump runs against DeSantis says he's mean, he doesn't care, everything else. I think that the stuff that the Trump people will sick on him, the Roger Stones in the world, you just won't believe it. I think Ron DeSantis wouldn't know what hit him if he gets into a pissing contest with Donald Trump. Of course, I'm going to be cheering it on if it happens because whoever gets hurt, and if both gets hurt, right on, James. What do you think?
I kind of disagree, and I'll go through the respectfully disagree stuff.
Thank you.
But what's at the core of this? Is the core of it that it's a loyalty to the leader? It's Trump, and Trump came along, and he just said what I was thinking, and I like him, and will stick with him forever. Or is this whole thing predicated on gut-wrenching fear? Is that you are losing, you had you in your mind, you didn't, but in your mind you had this exalted place in American politics and American culture, and people that are not like you are coming in and, I hate to use the word, but I will, replacing you. And I think that's a stronger impulse than the impulse to like Trump because he kind of grabs his crotch and, hates all the people that you hate. Where if they think DeSantis can, subjugate females, subjugate gays, subjugate people that are not white, I think they'll go with the person that they think can most enforce their kind of ethnic, racial, gender preferences, and I think they would abandon Trump and go to DeSantis if they thought he was the guy that could do it.
Well, we both would relish the fight, wouldn't we? So bring it on.
Well, yeah, but I mean that unfortunately, the things that Trump brought up and the emotions that he brought to the surface are not going to dissipate with him. And unfortunately, this is just a really, really, in this whole idea that the country belongs to us and we can keep it for ourselves. First of all, you're not going to have any Social Security or Medicare. You're going to have shitty job market. But forget all of that. This is really a fight about a change in America. People that America's changing and they understand the change and they're kind of comfortable with it. And people, I think, that we can revert back to another time. And that's just, I think it's that simple.
Kate in Springfield, Pennsylvania. I know Springfield well. I grew up about 5 miles from Springfield. She's a big fan of the show, and she thanks us for turning her on to Magic Spoon. She loves Magic Spoon. She said, if at the state level, secretaries of state are my number one priority. We went over that, and you mentioned it, James, and Senator McMorrow mentioned it today. What should be my second and third priorities? Attorney generals, district attorneys. What do you recommend, James?
Well, I think Senator McMorrow gave us some good guidance. You have a governor's race,
Yep.
I don't know how big priority that is. You have a Secretary of State's race, but pretty big priority. You have Attorney General's race, pretty big priority. You have a chance to take the state Senate back for the first time since 1984. And she said something, and I think you and I both mentally jumped to this. Let's find out. I'd like to see somebody do top 10 state Democratic parties ranked. All right?
Yep.
And where you know there's a good party that has support, let's take our friend in Wisconsin, Ben Winkler, okay?
Right.
Or let's take
and Michigan's good.
Susan,
Virginia's good.
Yeah. In Susan Schwecker in Virginia. I'd love to see some analytical thing on where can donors, because my initial reaction is, as opposed to trying to call or prioritize or engage in some kind of political triage, which to some extent is necessary because some places you have a shitty party. But where the places
you're not mentioning Florida,
be,
of course.
I would, let's have an evaluation. Right. Sometimes you can have a successful state. I mean, I don't have no idea what the California Democratic Party is, good or bad, but there's a lot of Democrats in California.
Right.
Okay, where are the places that have kind of punched above their weight, where our candidates have faith in that party? And, it's generally going to be in a place where you have the governor's a Democrat or somebody is, because they have some additional things. I'll give you another traditionally good. I have no idea if they're good now, but the DFL in Minnesota has been a particularly, over the years, I think we would both agree,
one of the best,
a particularly effective state party. But I think it's something that's worth investigation.
Yeah.
Because I get a lot of people asking me, where do I send my money? And I try to give them a conscientious answer, but I haven't been in it. I don't know a lot of players. I've been kind of I'm a retired college professor. But that's a very good discussion, and that's one worth having.
Well,
the other thing is, I don't know. I don't. The DNC has traditionally not been a particularly effective organization, and I don't
not now. Right.
I don't have good vibes here right now. I got to be truthful with you.
Well, James, you've answered, a question from Cody in Nashville, Tennessee. You've just answered it, because Cody asked, do state level political parties matter anymore? I think what you're saying is some do and some don't. Let's find out which ones do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get a guess of, maybe somebody knows this, but they're not all created equal.
Right. All
right.
You mentioned Ben Winkler's done a terrific job out in Wisconsin.
Right.
And but that's a good...
And I've done events for the Tennessee State Democratic Party. I don't want to say they're bad or good. They're very nice. It's a very difficult state. You're not going to win a lot of elections in Tennessee. But it could be that there are probably some great political parties in states that we don't do well. For all I know, the Utah Democrats are particularly, But sometimes the result is, it depends on where you are. But who spends the money in the right places, who deploys the right resources, who inspires the right people, and where can people like your Penn students who care and center this, where can they get their ass out of Philadelphia during the cycle and go and work where they can have an impact and they can have a real strategy and be well led? I think that's an important question that we should try to answer.
It sure is. I'd add one more thing to Kate's list of what should be her priorities, and that is state Supreme Court elections.
Sure.
I mean, boy, you just look at Michigan and Ohio and North Carolina and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. We have elected state. I know there's a critical one in North Carolina. They have 4-3 Democratic majority. 2 Democrats are up. There are 2 Supreme Court races up in Michigan this year. Check and find out where else. But if there's an elected state Supreme Court in your state, take a look at who's up and what the stakes are. Because in some of those states, they have prevented some really bad things from happening.
But look at what the Koch brothers, or the right wing organizers, they go down to the school board level.
Right, exactly.
And I'm not so much suggesting that. But if you listen to this show and you work for Democratic interest groups and and you can smell salt water, get your ass out of there. They're not doing any good at all. Right? The Michigan State Democratic Party is 6,000 times more valuable than any of these groups in Washington. So get out and do it.
Lisa all right, James, this is good. Moore Park, California. Have you been to Moore Park, California?
I have not. Spell it.
Moorpark.
I have not.
Well, we'll check it, Lisa, but you got to
check it.
Yeah, Lisa asked a good question. Said a couple of weeks back, news broke about Trump using a burner phone during the insurrection. Why haven't the Democrats seized this opportunity and turned it into the equivalent of Hillary Clinton's emails?
I read too many like spy books and police procedurals, and everybody has a burner phone kind of thing.
Can you retrieve them, James? If he,
you can't. Apparently, according to what I read, I have no idea. I'm not I always tell people I'm not having an affair and don't owe anybody money. So just call me. Don't, I'll answer it, and they can have my phone if they want it. I tend to watch porn on my computer and not my cell phone, so I wouldn't be too embarrassed. But
I'm not going there. Go ahead.
At any rate, can you? I will point this out till the day I die. The New York Times wrote more stories on Hillary's email in total than all of Trump's business and ethical problems. So that at some point, Benghazi, which of course turned out to be precisely nothing, the email story, which everybody went nuts about, which actually turned out to be precisely nothing. And we have real scandals to chase here. And their stunts, understand, if you look at modern history, their stunts are 10 times more effective
absolutely
than our real issues. And what's really interesting and not a stunt is the Jamie Raskin question: why didn't Mike Pence get in the car with the Secret Service? All right, there might be a benign answer, but the Vice President of the United States denying a request from the Secret Service to get in a car, and we don't know this, but the speculation is they were going to try to take him out of the equation. This is a question.
You think the Secret Service may really have been involved in that?
I'm not saying that they were, but what I'm saying is there is significantly more concern here and evidence that this would be which Hillary's emails, of course, were nothing. Benghazi was nothing. This may be the greatest scandal that you could imagine in our democracy. I don't know that that's true, but we should be seeing stories. We should be seeing at least, we couldn't because there's not enough ink on the equivalent of the email story. But this is a very, very fascinating story.
It is, and it's
fascinating.
It's a great question, too. So please keep those questions coming in. We love them. We can't get to them all, but we'll get to as many as we can. And we look forward to hearing from those of you who didn't get your questions in today. Resend them, and hopefully we'll get to them next week. This episode is brought to you by the Jordan Harbinger Show, a favorite podcast of ours from a long way back. Jordan Harbinger Show combines in-depth interviews of the world's most fascinating minds like Senator Barbara Boxer and Anderson Cooper with Feedback Friday episodes to respond to listener questions about everything from conventional conundrums like asking for a raise at work, that really is a conundrum, to doozies like helping a family member escape a cult. If you like us, you'll love Jordan. It's a great complement to this podcast, and you'll hear the latest analysis of topics like the state of Ukraine's war front and the corruptible influence of power. Or in the Jordan Harbinger Show, you'll also learn a lot from heavy-hitting conversations with guests like former United States Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, and even including wild facts like how's he being trailed by the Russian government, along with much more. Our listeners are going to love this, James.
Well, it shares a real culture. I like to think, and what our show, listen, it's unpredictable. You got to tune in because you're not exactly certain what you're going to get in terms of the topics, the guests, and even when you can predict it, sometimes the tapes are unpredictable. This is a provocative, interesting show that is not, just doing what everybody else is doing and saying what everybody else is saying.
Yep, absolutely. Whether Jordan is conducting an interview or giving advice to a listener, you'll find something useful that you can apply to your own life in every single episode of the Jordan Harbinger Show. That could mean learning how to ask for advice the right way, or it could just be discovering a slight mindset tweak that changes how you see the world. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, or go to jordanharbinger.com/start. That's jordanharbinger.com/start. That's the Jordan Harbinger Show, H-A-R, like the first three letters in hard, B-I-N-G, as you want to binge as you start catching up on his episodes, and R, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or look for the link in our show notes. Okay, James, now for the outrage. Mine is a raging upbeat this time. It's Jose Andres and the extraordinary work that the great chef is doing. Wow. What he's doing to help those beleaguered victims of Russia's war against Ukraine. This is, I want to give credit. William Woodson, one of his valued employees, gave me all this information. Jose has set up a network of 6,000 volunteers serving 300,000 miles each day at the Polish border. He has created hot meal stations for every refugee crossing that border. Supply chain support he's given to restaurants and established a regional bakery stations to ensure that bread is readily available. There are many cities the chef is helping, Odessa, Kiev, Lviv, and in Ukraine, but also he's helping places in Romania and Hungary and Moldova and Slovakia. The Ukrainians need weapons, James. They really need weapons, and we are supplying them. They also need food and sustenance, and Jose is leading the effort. He is a citizen of the world.
I had something else, but I just got to go along with you. And two things bring me to that. First, my friend Paul Fleming, think P.F. Chang's, think Fleming Steakhouse, all right? He's actually a Louisiana guy, went to LSU. And he was over there and was texting me from the Polish border, sending me pictures, and was helping Chef Andreas, who he gives all the credit to in the world. And then last night, you were there, and Mary and I were there, but well-deserved honor at the Colombian Embassy for our friend Maureen Orth, who's built schools and God knows done what for Colombia. And I was sitting there at a table. We're at a different table, but I had some young people, Peace Corps people, Colombians and everything else. And we talked about 10 minutes about Chef Andreas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, he's become a humanitarian icon. And I just want to get on the bandwagon here with you. And our friend William Woodson is an integral part of his team, and I think he's this is an inspirational show. We had Senator McMorrow, and we're talking about Jose Andres. These are really great people.
And we ought to note at that event last night, the great Maureen Orth became a Colombia citizen. She has done so much for that country over half a century, and so she's still an American citizen. She's got dual citizenship, and boy, I tell you, it's good for her, but it's really good for Colombia.
Absolutely. And that's one of my favorite places. Of course, I worked for President Santos, who ended up winning a Nobel Prize, which was really fun.
Hey, when you mention Nobel Prize, Jose ought to be on that list of that short list of possible Nobel Prize winners.
It should be.
Yeah.
Should definitely be. And the James Beard Foundation should give him a special humanitarian lifetime achievement award.
Yeah.
Everybody should do something to encourage more people to do that. They were talking about the school stuff that he was sending out, like during the pandemic. I mean, the reach of that guy is just stunning. He was prepared meals for these kids that were stuck at home. And one of the things that we just don't appreciate, our friend Billy Shore, who spent a lifetime doing this, we just take the fact that we have full stomachs for granted. We get cranky if we think we're going to eat lunch at noon, and it's 12:30, and God damn it, I got to eat.
Right.
And this is something that they should really elevate. I just so enthusiastic about your Jose Andres shout out. I just really want to double down with you on that because I think it's really important.
You mentioned Billy Shore. Let's not forget our friend Christy Harvey, who's his right-hand
Right,
woman.
absolutely.
So it's
absolutely. And, I've helped them raise some money from time to time, but food is something we take for granted. And boy, that's something that, billions of people in the world don't.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay.
That was a great one, Al. That stimulated me.
I know.
Great.
I just got so, I read a little bit about him, so I called William. I said, William, can you just tell me what he's doing? I was blown away. I mean, 300,000 meals a day at that border. I mean, it's incredible.
It really is.
And
that was we talked about 10 minutes last night, and this young guy who went to some suburban Philadelphia. I don't know. I forgot. Went to one of those. Haverford, Swarthmore, Penn. But whatever, just really, and loved sports. I mean, we were watching the game. This could have been a more charming another guy. Next to me, it was Colombian, and everybody would just love Chef Jose, man. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. Don't forget to send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd appreciate it if you check out the links to our sponsors, Smith AI, Trade Coffee, and the Jordan Harbinger Show in our show notes. We deeply thank you for supporting them. When you do, it helps make this podcast happen. To keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. Please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.